Jake El Gallo Paul taking on Gervonta Tank Davis.
The visual on this is going to be absolutely comical.
It's a bit of a head scratcher. To be completely honest.
He's a 135-pound world champion, lightweight world champion, and Jake Paul is a cruiserweight.
Will you watch, Shakur? I mean,
No.
Obviously, no?
Hell no, nah.
So Netflix has been making a real big splash in the world of boxing, making their debut back with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, which of course was really controversial. And then we got Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano 3, which was a real treat that I don't think many expected Netflix to participate in. And of course we're getting Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford in September, which is a pretty big deal. But recently they made a real head-scratching announcement that Jake Paul, who has already fought on Netflix, will be facing WBA lightweight champion Gervonta Tank Davis on Friday, November 14th at State Farm Arena in Atlanta. Now, I don't believe the Joshua fight would have been that fortunate of a situation for Jake Paul. However, it sounds like this fight fell through due to a deal when it came to the network. Jake Paul, of course, already having fought on Netflix, looking to make really big spectacle events, kind of like how that Tyson fight was. And Joshua, of course, being with Matchroom, has a deal with DAZN, and it sounds like that's where things kind of fell through a bit. But this fight with Tank has been in negotiations ever since his fight with Lamont Roach, and it sounded like this was going to be announced in the ring if Tank had won that night.
You know, you originally were going to call somebody out, you said, after the fight, but, you know, since the draw happened, it looks like Lamont Roach rematch is what's on the horizon. But who were you going to call out? What was the plan originally?
I think he was here. He came in my locker room.
Shakur Stevenson?
He wasn't in my locker room.
After Canelo, obviously, you know, didn't materialize, was the next one Tank?
Yeah, I mean, that was on the 1 yard line as well, but he has to rematch, you know, Lamont Roach. He wants to get that back, and then we'll be back in discussions with Mr. Gervonta.
Now that we've gone through the history on the making of this fight, we really have to talk about this matchup, because when this was announced, I thought it was one of the more bizarre announcements I've ever seen in the world of boxing today, and I had to look twice to make sure this was legit. Of course, we have to address the absolute size differential here. Paul will most likely be plus 200 pounds on fight night unless there is some sort of rehydration clause in effect. Most Valuable Promotions co-founder Nakisa Bardarian stated in an article on ESPN that the contracted weight and number of rounds has not yet been decided, but I think we can assume this will be a 10-rounder with nothing really being officially sanctioned, therefore being an exhibition bout broadcasted on Netflix. Paul came in at 199.4 pounds for his last fight against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I doubt this would be contested at cruiserweight, and Jake might have to cut more weight than he's ever had to cut in a while. I think if this fight were to be contested at 195, Davis would come in at, let's just say, very unique shape, as I believe 195 is even bigger than his walk-around weight. We're talking about a man who fights at 135, is 5'5", who can pack a major punch in his respective weight class, but when you're testing that power up at cruiserweight, I really don't believe it'll transfer. Now, I'm not saying Tank is going to be a massive underdog. In fact, I think he has a great chance of winning this fight with all the experience under his belt, and not to mention, he's in his prime. But if he's going to win this fight, I do believe we're looking at a decision here, as I don't think he can get Jake out of there. Using that power up against a cruiserweight is going to be a very, very difficult task. As for Paul, you know he's going to use that size to his advantage, and I don't really think he should be promoting this fight saying that, oh, he's being overlooked. Gervonta Davis is a massive hurdle for him because he is an actual pro in his prime, because to the naked eye, when these two men first face off, it's not going to seem that way at all. The size difference will not tell this story. Jake will plan to be a real bully in there, but you know what? I see where he's going with this, because if you're asking a fan of the sport their opinions on this fight, they'll say it's pointless. For Paul, he's fighting a guy where he has an obvious size advantage over that will really get him nowhere if he's pursuing a world title at cruiserweight. And for Tank, this could be seen as I guess, an obvious payday that he took instead of taking big matchups in his respective weight class, like the Lamont Roach rematch or a possible big fight with Shakur Stevenson. But to the general public, I believe this is how they'll view it. It's just surface level. Jake Paul, a popular fighter who draws eyes, controversial, will be competing against Gervonta Davis, a big attraction in the world of boxing who is known for putting opponents out cold, is a legitimate world champion, and is in his active prime. And you can catch it all on Netflix for free with no additional fees. If you already have the subscription, it's on. And surface level, to a fan that does not know the specifics about weight class, does not know who fights in their respective divisions, but does know their names, I think they'll be hooked. And I think this fight could actually be pretty massive, believe it or not. And you know what? I think this fight might do well, and I'm talking about the eyes and the numbers that it might bring. This will pull in casual fans for fun, maybe hardcore fans for curiosity, and that's a really big maybe. And it'll be talked about very much so up until the fight itself. But if anything, this kind of just shows where Netflix fits in the boxing scene. They're not really interested in regular title fights or really general title unifications. If two big names bring eyes and both bring in a load of fans, they'll be interested. I don't think if this were Bivol versus Better Beef 3 or Usyk versus Parker, they'd be really throwing money down to have that fight on their platform. But if you're talking pound for pound stars, Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford, now they want to do business. In this case, it's controversial but widely popular Jake Paul fighting the pound for pound attraction and knockout star Gervonta Davis. It's going to be a very strange night in that ring in November. Maybe Paul's power will have a bigger impact than we thought. Say what you want about him, but he could definitely crack up at cruiserweight. And if so, with that height and reach and just size advantage for Paul, this could present some issues for Davis that maybe could get him hurt. But if you're asking me personally, I think this could be a point decision win for Gervonta Davis. Most likely will be. And it will be a very strange point in this generation's history of boxing that will probably be forgettable or will maybe be a standout night. Who knows? I'm interested to see what Netflix does with boxing in the future. This is a step, I don't want to say backwards, but it's definitely a step back in that direction of Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, where I don't want to say circus act, but it's definitely not in the realm of this is for a world title or this will have any real consequences in their respective divisions. If there's something that's really piquing my curiosity about this event, it's seeing Netflix's progression in the world of boxing, starting with the highly controversial event that was Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, and now in September, they are having two legitimate pound-for-pound stars in Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford going at it on their platform, which is a ginormous step up from that Paul Tyson event. If you have any crazy opinions on this fight, which I know there are many, please let me know. I know this thing kind of has the boxing world on fire right now, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.